So my brother came and visited recently, and he was playing with the kids, and he was trying to, egg them on. I've got a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so he was messing around with them, and his filter didn't work in this moment because he said, "You guys are just being some stupid little kids, huh? Ha, ha, ha." And he was like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that." My daughter, who's 3, stood up and said, "You is stupid," right to his face. And I thought, well, you've made him right, first of all, because that is not quite how we'd say that. And second of all, good job. That was perfect. Normally we don't condone the word stupid being said in our household, but I was like, I got to give you credit, girl. That was pretty good. And then just a couple weeks ago, my son, who is just like his mother, he bears no resemblance to me in this way at all, but you're not going to correct that?
I'm going to leave it for a minute.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We're in my office at the school, and he pulls his shirt up a little bit to reveal that he's got something kind of tucked into his pants. And I said, "Son, what is that?" And it was like string cheese, 3 things of string cheese in the packaging. And he said, "I wanted to bring a snack to Bible class." I said, "Give me that."
We're going to sneak it in.
And I threw it away because I said, we don't put cheese down our pants. Just smuggle into Bible class.
Wait a minute. Was it still in the package?
It was still in the package. And I thought, no.
You had it figured out, man. I don't know.
It's all right. And, just looking at him like, what's wrong with you? And just recently, we're sitting down and we're talking about football. He loves football. I know you're a Titans fan.
Absolutely.
I'm a Steelers fan. So we don't get along often, but when we can, it's great, you know?
Yeah.
And I hope you guys have a good draft. I know you have the number 1 pick at this point.
We're terrible. But
by the time this airs, we will already have, witnessed who's been drafted.
Right.
So we have no clue yet.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the time to read all 500 eligible names that could be the number 1 pick.
Yeah, don't do that.
No, but my son loves football and tries to learn and absorb all the knowledge that he can. And we had this Pro Football Hall of Fame book that I got when I was about his age. And he will read that when he's in the restroom. That's his thing. And then he'll just come out and tell you the most crazy things that you didn't think were true. And so he comes out one night and he sees that the Los Angeles Rams are playing somebody. And he says, "Daddy, did you know that they used to play in Cleveland?" And I said, "Son, look, I'm a Steelers fan. I know Cleveland, right? Cleveland's been the Browns. Baltimore was in, a situation at one point where Baltimore left Cleveland to go to Baltimore to come to the Ravens. I know all the history." I said, "Son," with emphatic nature, I said, "they have never been in Cleveland, the Rams. They've been in St. Louis and Los Angeles, and that's it." And Adam says, "Yes, they have been." And I said, "No, they haven't." And Adam said, "Yes, they have." And finally, it got to that point where Dad kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Son, don't argue with me." So he says, "Yes, sir." And he says, "Can I show you something?"
Uh-oh.
And I should have known that was a trap. But he says, "Can I show you something?" And I said, "Okay." So he goes back and grabs that Pro Football Hall of Fame book, which I had been given as a child, which is just double insulting because I forgot this was in there. And he says, "Would you read this page here?"
Oh, boy.
And the big bold letters, "Cleveland Rams lose and move to L.A." And I was like, "You've got to be kidding me. There's no way this is real." So I'm reading the article that's in this book, and it was a true thing. The Rams were in Cleveland for like 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And during the playoffs, the game that they played, it was so cold outside that like nobody showed up, not a single fan. And so the team decided to move to LA.
Right.
And now, ironically, the LA Rams and the LA Chargers don't have a lot of their own fans in their own stadium.
Right.
Because people are mad that they left San Diego and left St. Louis. And so I have had to deal with the fact that every time someone comes over that is a friend of mine, Adam will sit down and go, "Have you told them the story yet about the Cleveland Rams?"
Oh, boy.
And I'm like, man, this kid will not let it go.
Yeah, you're not going to get over that one.
But, he proved me wrong. I mean, that's got to be.
But I love how he approached it. I mean, almost biblically.
He did. He's like, if brother has fault with you,
listen, can I show you something?
Yeah.
I'm worried about you.
He didn't go start a podcast and start blasting me or anything.
He didn't go on Facebook and light you up, man.
That's right. He didn't connect all the dots crazily somehow.
He said, "Would you read this here? Here's some scripture. Just read this.
Just read this.
Come on, Dad.
Come
on,
to
Dad.
your own conclusion of the
Come to your
truth.
senses, Father.
Come to Jesus, Dad.
Come to your own conclusion to the truth.
He will save you. So that's kind of what I deal with. And I don't know
He's just like you.
I know. It really is frustrating because I seem to remember not string cheese, but I seem to remember trying to like sneak snacks into Bible class myself.
Yeah.
And thinking, that's probably true. So we've decided to homeschool him because I was a very bad kid in public school.
Boy.
We would not have gotten along well back then. I have changed mostly. I don't do this type of stuff anymore, but I was in the principal's office quite a bit. And
Well, I think we all had our moments when we were younger. Because I wasn't.
What made you get into education and specifically principal? Because that seems like such a thankless job.
Yeah. Well, it takes some backstory about how I got into education, but when I graduated my undergrad, my wife and I, we met in college, and when I graduated from Middle Tennessee State, I graduated with a finance degree, and I had a job pending with Allstate in Nashville to be a financial analyst. And we got married our senior year of college, and then we had our daughter. And so I'm new husband, about to be new dad. And we were thinking, man, we don't have any family in Nashville. She's from Cleveland. I'm from Chattanooga. We didn't have any family in Nashville. We had the church family, but we didn't have any blood ties. And we were like, man, we're going to need some help. Let's move back home. So I took a job in retail finance because my undergrad was in corporate finance. And so I was going to take a job. I took a job in retail finance managing banks. So, it was all right, but it wasn't what I went to school to do. And so I just gotten burned out with it, was just hating my job. And over the course of a few conversations, like biblical conversations with some people that didn't know each other, they'd encouraged me that I might want to become a teacher. And these are people over various times and points in my life that didn't know each other. And they encouraged me and said I might want to be a teacher. Well, then I did junior achievement. I don't know if you guys know what junior achievement is, but junior achievement is like where you have community business curriculum that taught by community business partners through junior achievement, which is actually an entity. And they write the curriculum, and you go into classrooms, and you as a bank manager, I go in and teach, supply and demand or goods and services, something like that. And so the teacher of the classroom, when the students went to their pull out, I don't know if it was like library or PE or music, but when they went to their pull out and we had a few minutes, she said, now, I don't know how good of a banker you are, but you might want to think about teaching. So when a teacher told me that, I was like, oh, I'm going to pursue it. And then I end up getting a grant to get my master's for free. And then when I got my specialist and my doctorate. So that's how I kind of got into education.
So, is that how you became Dr. G?
That is how I became Dr. G. That is.
So is that what everybody calls you at the school?
At school, that's what they call me. Yes.
Does it feel nice to have a really cool nickname like that?
It's pretty cool. Before that, I was Coach G. So, I coached when I taught. I taught and coached at the same time. So, so it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Well, that's really cool. I like, and have a greater respect for principals now than I did when I was younger.
Yeah. And it's a lot.
Well, as an assistant principal, the viewpoint I've always kind of gotten is the principal has a lot of their own responsibilities. There's a reason that you got to go out and get an assistant principal because there's even more responsibilities that are then put there. So I know you got your hands full every day. Yeah. What does a typical day look like for you?
Boy, see, and that's the thing. If about education, every educator could write their own book and they would be different. No day is the same. And so my day, I oversee our alternative education. So you're an assistant principal. So we have 5 assistant principals at the school, and we have the building principal, and then we have 5 assistant principals. We have 4 principals who are grade level, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then the alternative, which is myself. So, and then we all have sub duties. So I, in addition to being the assistant principal for the alternative education, I'm also the administrator for the math department. I oversee testing, and I am the textbook liaison. So when they go through textbook adoption, or if they want a new curriculum, I have to kind of investigate those things. And then we all do classroom teacher observations for the state. So just days are different.
Mhm.
Just days are different. And you just never know, because though you'll have, I may have my list of to-dos that day, you just never know what's going to happen. And so days are often disrupted. A lot of meetings, a lot of decision making. Sometimes you get decision fatigue because you got to make a decision. And but I love it. I love it. I love education. I love being around people. I love just being, active in students' lives and trying to be a good example for them, and pouring, especially the demographic that I serve.
Yeah.
I love pouring into them and just showing them that they are special because God made them, and you are a product of God. So just that simple fact makes you special. Now go live up to the value that God sees in you. So that's what I try to pour into my students.
And I would imagine with a day-to-day where you're dealing with kids and dealing with things, you've probably heard some crazy stuff over the years too.
Yeah, man.
Is there anything that you can go on record without telling who it was or what involved, but what might be one of the craziest situations that you ever had to experience that you feel comfortable enough talking about?
I can share some things. As long as I can share situations, no names,
Right.
obviously. So I had a student one time, and there are things that just break your heart that you see, in public education. Things break your heart. There's several things to rejoice about. Again, no day is the same. But I remember this, and this just kind of broke my heart. I had a student who I had to educate through the juvenile detention center because of some choices. And again, I serve that type of demographic. Sure. And so the student had been released from the juvenile detention center, was back on campus, had like maybe a credit and a half to graduate, and did something to go back to be incarcerated again. This time when he got out, they let him out because he turned 18. So they had to let him out. Well, when they let him out, 12 o'clock a.m., get out. They put him out. He went home. Mom had moved. Gone. Like, didn't have anything. He came to school that day, right? He was released at 12 a.m., went home. I don't know where he slept. I didn't know where he slept. He came to school because there he, at least until 2:30, he would have a roof. He would get, 2 breakfasts. Yeah. He would get breakfast twice. He would get lunch. He'd have the security. I mean, he wasn't, he was a handful. I mean, he was a hard personality to deal with. But everyone has their story. And so, so that was extremely heartbreaking, that when he was released, they kind of kicked him out of jail at 12 o'clock a.m. because he turned 18. It was his birthday. And he came to school because he's like, I don't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah.
It just seems like somebody should be on top of something and go, that's not a good idea.
Right.
Or let's check on his family before we send him, just release him out on the street.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those where not everything that really happened is always funny.
Yeah.
But also those kind of situations, I'm sure, like you say, I mean, it's heartbreaking. But this is why we help people, and whether it's ministering or whether it's teaching or whatever the case, you're always ministering.
Absolutely.
And that's what Christians certainly have to realize, that we're all servants in that way. And we need more Christian servants in school systems to help in those situations too.
One of the sayings that I would imagine is not just specific to the location where I work, but you cannot make this up. Like educators public educators, they will say, and they have said, I'm sure, you cannot make this up. Mm-hmm. It's unreal.
Have you ever had the phrase, only me? Only I could have to find myself in a situation like this. This just doesn't seem fair. And it's like, of course it's me. There was a situation at a camp, and a good friend of ours that we know well was directing that session, and I had gotten involved because I had happened to witness what happened. And people who know me very well, Wayne obviously knows this about me, and we haven't seen or been around as much as we could have, but I love to be the levity in a situation if possible.
Right.
There are a lot of moments where it's like, we're supposed to be serious, and then I'm there, and I don't facilitate that as well at times. I know when to be serious, but there are also some times where Wayne could tell you it's just like, we can count on Michael if we need something. And so that whole week I had been being myself and working with these people and having fun. And the joke had always been, something's happening to Michael this week, no matter what. I had had problems with a nail in my tire. Then I got there and I was like, I need to change my wiper blades. And so I go and I went to change the wiper blade, got the wiper blade off, and that metal part that's on that spring slammed back down, shattered open my windshield, gave me a nice little spider web that obviously wasn't fixable. And so I had to then deal with that and get a new windshield brought in and put on. And all this stuff's been happening all week. And so there's this pretty big situation that takes place, and I happen to witness it. And so I walk with this person to go and talk to the directors. And when the director sees me coming and goes, "Are you involved in this?" And I said, "Of course I am." What else did you expect? I mean, come on. And he said, "That checks out, actually." And so they're talking to me for a few minutes and getting my side of everything. And I said, "Look, I'm supposed to be going home tonight. Like, I'm not even supposed to be here right now." But as I was on my way out, I ran into this situation. So that's not my fault. I didn't do it on purpose. And so I feel that way sometimes, where it's just like, of course, why not? Just pile it on. Yeah. Bring it on. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think about sometimes the funny things of technology as well. And I want to put this guy on blast over here for a little bit. Wayne started a new work last year. It's called 416 Ministries, and they travel the country in a camper, an Airstream camper, and go all over and help places that need encouragement. They take their verse from Ephesians 4:16, edifying the body of love in Christ, right? That's it. I was always saying equipping, and he'd be like, "It's not equipping. You've got to get this right."
That's verse 12.
Finally got it right. It only took a year. It only took one full year.
You're on it, man.
We talk every day. Well, Wayne had to upgrade some of the things to be able to get a truck that could haul a big camper like that and be able to do what he needed to do. And so he got a nice truck that was used and was able to get that worked out. We're sitting in it together. He's showing me some of the stuff, and he's so excited. New work, able to get all this stuff working out and finding the best bang for your buck. And Cindy calls in, and he goes and hits a button and just immediately rejects her call. Just like, and I thought he did it on purpose. And then he's like, "Hello," he's trying to talk to her. And I said, "You hung up on her." And he said, "I did what?" And so I told him, I said, "You've got to let Cindy know that the very first thing you did in this nice truck that you just got is hang up on your wife." Very first thing. So what do you have to say for yourself?
What do I have to say for myself? Hey, man, we all make mistakes.
Well, it seemed a little too eager. I think you did it on purpose.
No, it was
Cindy, we know it was on purpose.
New technology, and I have enough gray hair to say, I don't know what I'm doing.
New technology. What? I'm pretty sure that's not new technology.
It's new to me, buddy.
Have the school system technology it's catch-22 in some ways. Like, you want to use it. Yeah. You also have to be careful of it. There are some schools, like I've watched the show Abbott Elementary before. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but it depicts like a broken down school system. They don't have a lot of money. And there was an episode where like they got a shipment of, I think, iPads that was meant to go to some charter school that was more well off. And so they were so excited. They distributed all of them, and several of them, I think, got damaged and destroyed. And then someone showed up and said, "Hey, that shipment was actually supposed to go over there." And so they were panicking, trying to gather all the items back up because they had ruined a lot of them. When it comes to technology in school, do you have any funny things that have happened when it comes to the distribution of tech or how to deal with that and things of that? Because I've always heard my mom talk about, we've got these iPads, but they're 15 years old and they don't work. And
technology is one of those things in public education. You almost wonder, man, is there a more wasteful way to spend money? Because it just, because the technology it's because if you're not careful, these salespersons, for these tech companies, they will rob. They'll just rob districts blind because they're selling bells and whistles. And so, you have to ask yourself, okay, how is this technology proven to increase student achievement or, so you have to ask that question. But these bells and whistles, and sometimes, schools, systems and districts will be so quick to, adopt this new technology and then infuse it into the classroom. And then it's just like, we don't even know how to use it. Like, you have to spend time and money training teachers to use it. And by the time they get just comfortable enough, here's a new piece of technology or a new app or new software. Teachers are just like, what am I supposed to teach? I'm spending all my time trying to learn this technology when I could have taught this lesson, 30 times. And so, that happens all the time. I remember one time, man, we had a parent that, so we got a call from the local pawn shop. And they're like, we've got a device from y'all. And so they gave us asset tag number. We traced it and we traced it back to the student. And so we had to send a school resource officer to the pawn shop to pick up the item. And then we had to threaten the parent, but the parent was like, oh, I was going to have it back by the time y'all got back in school.
I was just pawning it for a minute.
Yeah, I was just going to pawn it just for a little bit.
Just need a little quick.
We were like, it's not yours. Like, you can't do that. It's our device.
Yeah.
The people will say, sometimes you think, like, do you hear yourself? You can't do that. You can't do that. But
and I always wonder that too, because technology changes so fast.
It does.
And to just dump millions of dollars, in 1 year's time to change everything out.
But the way budgeting, the way funding works for education, it's if you don't use it, you lose it.
Right, it's true.
So you're sitting here with this money. And just like, and it's earmarked for certain things.
So it has to be for that.
It has to be used for that. And if you don't use it for that, then the state will just take it.
It may not give you enough next year when you actually needed it.
Right. So you end up, I don't want to say it's intentional wasteful spending, because you do look for proper ways to spend it. I mean, because you're like, we have it and we have to spend it. We don't want to waste it. And so that happens a lot.
To try to find that balance, where it's, and also something that will actually benefit the class.
Right.
I'm sure you're trying to find that balance in there too. So,
right.
What a struggle.
We didn't have, I know you guys probably didn't have a whole lot of technology growing up in school either, but we had the library, had the computer lab that we could use. And, I remember they have to put up a lot of ad blockers on the internet for obvious reasons that don't even need to be discussed. It's just obvious.
Right.
But that meant that all the game sites were blocked too. And so there used to be a website. It doesn't work anymore. So if anybody's watching this, like, he's about to change my life for me. It doesn't work. But it was schoolisbeat.com or something like that. And somebody made like something that took down the blockers for the game sites. So you could go and play video games on the computer in the library. And somebody printed like a bunch of material that they shouldn't have been printing to the library using that site. And shortly after, that site went AWOL, thankfully. But I remember thinking, man, they took my gaming site away. Like, I was so happy because I didn't like going to the computer lab and having to work or anything. But when you could play games, it was fun.
Right.
But now it's like, I hear someone basically say, yeah, this preschooler, they've got an iPad mini that they're using. And it's like, why? Why has a preschooler got an iPad mini? And what are they doing with it? And it's just like, well, they're playing Fruit Ninja or whatever. And that's helping them somehow. So I didn't realize that, though, if earmarked for certain things, got no choice but to use it. Yep. So that's, what do you do?
It's kind of, ties your hands. Just like, what do we do?
Yeah.
So
back in my day, it was to buy the Select 2 typewriters. It wasn't to buy even a word processor.
Was it really a typewriter?
It was a typewriter.
Was it really?
Okay,
I use a typewriter. I'm old enough to have used a typewriter.
My senior year, we got our first word processors in, and the biggest thing, we all learned how to turn it on, do all that. We had to turn the switch on, and we'd sit there and wait for it to warm up. Mm-hmm. It didn't just come on all, and so we're sitting there and wait for it to warm up, and somebody had figured out how to, type your name in it, and basically there was a code you could type and it'd make your name go, do a wave across the screen, and we're like, yes. It's a big deal, man.
It was the coolest thing ever.
It was the coolest thing ever.
Because that was in
and then we
advance in
graduated and we
technology.
had no clue how to use technology.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing too, is like our kids have this intuitive nature on how to do it. Adam knows how to operate my phone in some ways better than I do. And even Audie, she's not even 3 yet at the time we're talking here today. And that's something that she could take the phone and send pictures, or, take pictures, I should say, and FaceTime and hold the phone up and look at you and smile and all. And I'm just like, I can't fathom having been that age and just being able to do that. And then my mom reminds me that apparently when I was 5, I came home from school and she was in the computer room of my dad's study. And she was like, I don't know how to save this information on this floppy disk.
Oh, I remember floppies.
And as she describes it, I walked over and I was like, you do this, 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 and this, saved. And I walked out like, you're welcome. And she said it was saved properly. She's like, I still don't know how you did it. And I was like, I don't remember doing it. But evidently at 5 years old, I knew how to run a floppy disk. And that sounds so weird to say. If you tell the average teenager today, do you know what a floppy disk is? They would look at you like you've just had a stroke.
Well, pretty much anything you have to put into a computer. I mean, that's
any external drive.
We're done. We're done with that.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore.
What do you mean? It's in the cloud.
And by the way, yes, I hung up on my wife.
He's just not getting
accidentally. However, I've hung up on you as well.
Yeah,
the very same
purpose.
way. Absolutely.
On purpose.
And that's how I know it was also on purpose with Cindy.
Oh no.
That's always something.
Anyways, I know that there's a lot of stories that can be told that can't be told.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the premise of this podcast, is usually the best stories are the ones that are told when we're not recording.
Well, I tell you.
I'm going to give you one final chance. If there's anything that's hit you while we've been talking that you want to go on record and talk about, now's the time. This is today is the day of salvation moment.
I have so many, like, it's just a lot, when you're trying to think, and I'm not very good, because my wife was always like, because the way I was raised and my upbringing and my story, my journey from where I came from to now. My wife's like, you should write a book. I'm like, I can't remember all this stuff. I'm not good at that. And so there's a few things. I remember one time, and this has probably happened to every gospel preacher at some point. But I remember I was preaching a sermon, and I was preaching, and I was preaching, and I don't necessarily remember exactly the point I was making, but I was talking about how the righteous man will prostrate himself before God. And I see this change, like this countenance change, and these facial expressions change over the congregation. I'm like, what did I say? I didn't know in the moment what I said. Well, as you would have it, as we do, we exit, and toward the end of the conclusion of worship, and we exit, and as preachers, we go to the back and greet people. So I'm back there greeting, and every member was like, now the righteous man castrates himself. I'm like, I said castrate. They were like, yeah, you said castrate. And I was like, oh my goodness. I went the whole, and so I'm preaching, but in my mind, I'm thinking, what did I say? What did I say? And then when I was so embarrassed that I'd said castrate in a sermon, and I didn't catch it.
Hey, that happens though. I was telling you guys before we started, there's a video clip somewhere where it's this guy praying in some denominational setting, and he's like, Father, we thank you today that our elders are castrating themselves before you. somebody had spliced that clip together with them reacting to it, and he said, the elders are doing what? What's going on in your congregation? And then I was thinking, as I was, preacher mind, could you have imagined if the qualifications for an elder must be castrated? no way.
No,
There would have been
no, thank you.
But that's something people say things all the time that they don't think through.
Yeah.
And then they're like, no, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Eric Owens years ago did that. I won't say what he said because he should be the one to say it. He had a faux pas happen at South Haven at their lectureship. And it was so bad that after he said it, he went, no, he didn't. Like, he said something and then he caught it immediately. And so he was like, now don't y'all go and tell anybody what I said. But it was on recording because it was the power lectureship.
Right. Oh,
It's there. And so
no.
it's funny when that happens because all of us have a moment where it's like, we said what?
We have all, slipped and said something that didn't come out just right. You know, we slipped a word in there. It was odd,
Oh, man.
and or totally awkward. But we used to, in preaching school, and I get myself in trouble here, but
oh no, I know what you're going to say.
in preaching school, we just kind of go through the dictionary, and so whoever was up speaking in chapel, we'd give them their word. They had to fit their word, whatever word we gave them, into their sermon, their chapel talk that they're getting graded on, that they're going to get, tore down in front of everybody for, to begin with. And we would wait till like 2 minutes before. Like, come on, man, give me my word. Just let me thinking about it, try to work it in somehow, Of course, you try to go through the dictionary, you try to find the whatever you can find,
Axolotl.
Something. And so we had been on a tear, man. Everybody had been doing it, and getting their word in, and everything was working out and everything. And I remember, I'll tell on Larry Fife because he's not here to defend himself. But anyway, we got Larry Fife, and somebody gave him, whoever was right before him, whoever went before, they get to choose the word for the next guy, So they're going through there, and they said, all right, I got your word. He's like holding to the last minute, he said, well, just tell me what it is, He's like, masticate.
Oh.
He said, I don't even know what it means, and I'm not doing it. I'm done. I'm out. Just stopped right there. I said, I don't blame you. I wouldn't have done that either. There's no way I'm working that in.
At the marriage retreat, I had planned this little opening to try to encourage people, and it was, the devil hates that you're here, but God loves it. That was what I was, and I got up there and I came this close to saying, God hates that you're here. Because I was
but
so
the devil
nervous.
loves it.
The devil loves it.
No, we don't.
And I started to say it and I was like, pause. Just wait 1 second. But I got in the car with Megan that night when we went to dinner and I said, I almost said, God hates that you're here. Like, why are you, pack it up and go home.
Yes,
what are you doing
why
here?
Are you
this is wrong. And so, yeah, you get caught in your head and you think, and the brain's processing information. And I think that's hard for people to understand. Preaching, yes, you may have an outline, and yes, you may have prepared down to the nth degree, especially those of you that preach without notes, usually. You're thinking of 45 things at once.
Right.
And you're trying to make sure they're going in the right order. And then, as often happens to us preachers, we'll be standing there and we'll think of something that we had not thought of in the initial study process.
Right.
And sometimes it's okay to do this. We'll throw it in. But you can't rely on that every time.
Right.
Because sometimes it's like, yeah, that's a good thought, but you should have fleshed it out a little bit more. And you still think, I got this. And so you say it anyway, and someone goes, now, you had me very confused at this one point, and every time I've ever heard that, it is usually because I allowed myself to go off script and just say, well, here's something I think sounds good. And so, yeah, preaching's not easy. It's difficult. And don't forget, God hates that you're here.
I probably should go back in there and throw in this. This was not an MSOP sanctioned type of thing. This is not normal.
We don't endorse that.
We do not endorse that.
And we don't do it anymore.
And it's not happening anymore. I'm quite sure that.
Although now
there
are some students that listen to this. If it starts again, way to go, Wayne. I'm sorry. Again.
Brought it back.
Again. I don't want to get critiqued.
Again. Dropping G's.
Eric, you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, bro.
He's like, no, I'm not falling for that trap. He said, I'm done.
We'll go another round, brother.
Let me incriminate myself.
I didn't get to do it to you today, but one of our favorite things is usually someone will come in and they'll tell a story. And it's about somebody in the congregation that's very elderly. Maybe they've even passed on, and we wait until the last moment. We said, well, guess what? They're here right now to talk to you.
Oh boy!
So I didn't get to do that with you. I don't appreciate that. Next time you got to let me be set up that way.
Yes,
you know?
that is.
We
try to Jerry Springer them if we can.
Yes. It's as close to Jerry Springer as it can happen. Could you imagine if there was that type of thing where the brotherhood drama was able, like, just in the fellowship hall, not recorded, just we know these two people have an issue. Y'all just go fight in the fellowship hall and it will be okay.
Yeah.
Just fight it out.
Just fight it out.
Let's go ahead and get it over with.
And then hug it out.
It worked for Rocky and Apollo. I mean, I don't know why it wouldn't work for everybody else.
Right.
So at any rate, thanks for being with us, Eric.
Man, pleasure.
Really appreciate
Thank y'all for having me.
We've enjoyed it.
I appreciate it.
And we're looking forward to next week when we have the opportunity to be back again with another guest on our summer content for Through Their Eyes. And did that really happen? So until then, let's have some fun.